Joining us on the show today, a movie we just talked about at the top of the show. The director of Molli and Max in the future, Michael Lukk Litwak. Did I say that correctly? Michael Lukk
Yeah.
Litwak?
Yeah, you did.
Awesome. Hey, let's put you front and center here and talk to you about the film that Alan and I both gave it a 9 out of 10. I don't know if you were watching earlier.
I saw Alan's, but I haven't. I was in a meeting right before this, but that's amazing. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, Michael, I actually met you at Oak Cliff Film Festival.
Oak Cliff, yeah. I remember that. I mean, because I am a fan of Film Threat. I read it, and was really hoping for to get covered by you guys, and so was very, very honored to get a 9 out of 10. And we're using pull quotes from your guys' reviews, and it means a lot.
Well, you're a fan until we give you a bad review, and then you're not going to be a fan. But look, exactly. I watched the movie twice. It's rare where it's just like, because I watch a lot of movies. I watch the film, and then I'm like, I watch another movie, and it was so bad, Private Eye, that I watched your movie again because I had to get the bad movie taste out of my mouth. It's so clever, and I don't know if you heard how I described it. It's like Annie Hall meets Red Dwarf, the British sci-fi sitcom. The matter-of-fact way that elements like the poop phone, the parallel universe phone, it's just, they never acknowledge, it's just matter-of-fact, like using...
They don't wink at the camera when they tell a joke.
Or it doesn't call itself out like, look how clever this is. It just is. To me, it's all about the writing and the chemistry between your two leads. What came first, this script? How did you find the two leads? And I want to talk to you about the special effects and whatnot, but let's start off with the story and the cast.
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, thank you. That's so great to hear. It came from a lot of different areas. I kind of grew up watching, Back to the Future and Star Wars and just, big budget, high octane action adventure, life and death stakes, kind of plot driven films. And then that's kind of like what made me fall in love in movies as a kid. And then as I kind of got older, I found myself kind of gravitating towards a new type of movie, which was about people walking around New York, complaining about their therapists and, dealing with everyday problems and worrying about small kind of slights and your reputation and, kind of all these like real world things. And I fell in love with those types of films that are maybe a little bit more character first films. And I moved to New York to go to NYU, and I started making short films. And just in the process of making things, I kind of realized that I wanted to make movies that were true to what got me into filmmaking in the first place, but also kind of true to what kind of kept me interested in filmmaking. And so I started making a bunch of shorts. I had my NYU thesis did well, and it got me like representations and stuff. And then I spent, 7 or 8 years trying to get a movie made, and it looked like it was going to happen. I had, we put together a budget and we had some cast attached, and this is a different movie. And it looked like we were going to make this kind of bigger indie film. And then the pandemic happened, and it all kind of fell apart. And kind of overnight, like so many people, like my life just kind of went on pause. And I suddenly had a lot of time, and whenever I'm feeling down or I have time, I watch movies. And, I went through all the Pixar movies, and then I love a good theme. And then I decided to go through like romantic comedies with my wife, and I rewatched When Harry Met Sally, and, it's a perfect film. I love that movie so much, but it was interesting to watch it in the midst of like lockdown because you never know what they're, you have no idea what they do for a living. You have no idea what their life is like outside of kind of their relationship. You have no idea like what's going on in the world around them. It is this movie that can feel like very much like comfort food because it is just so focused on them, and it doesn't bring in kind of like the problems of the world around them. And so I love it. I don't get me wrong, but I was like, I don't think you could make that exact same movie today. And I don't think I'd want to see that exact same movie again, because it would just be a direct copy of When Harry Met Sally. So, but the kind of wheels got started turning because I was like, well, how would you make a modern When Harry Met Sally? And how would I want to do that by, and how could I incorporate all the different things I love about filmmaking? And so part of it was like, so much of our time and energy is spent on the internet. So much of dating has changed because of internet dating. I think people like what is going on in the world outside you very much directly affects you, and whether or not you are, are able to even pursue the career you want is dependent upon, what is going on outside. And then on top of that, you never find out what they do for a living in When Harry Met Sally. And as for me, someone whose like career is a very big part of my identity, and it was interesting to see a movie that just didn't even kind of broach that part of life. And so it kind of started from, this place of like, I wanted to capture the zeitgeist of like what it feels like to be alive today, where it can feel really overwhelming and frustrating and scary and kind of absurd to be alive. But, really at the end of the day, what kind of gets us through all of that is our relationships, whether they're with our friends or our loved ones or our romantic relationships. And I think, a great romantic comedy is kind of about the power of two people that can have an influence on one another's lives, and how you can kind of learn and grow and challenge somebody else to learn and grow. Because I think that is what happens in real life, and that is what relationships do for you. So it really kind of all started from that. And, I always try to kind of start from like an emotional place of like, what is the feeling I'm trying to get across to an audience? And then how do I use science fiction and fantasy and metaphors and allegories to kind of explore those feelings and try to show people what those feelings actually feel like? Because in real life, something will happen, and when you maybe tell it to your friend, they'll be like, it's not that big of a deal, but it will feel like such a big deal to you. And I think that's something that I love about fantasy and science fiction, is it can take these things and make it kind of really communicate, the higher stakes kind of feeling of some of these life experiences.
Yeah. When Harry Met Sally, I'm surprised that didn't pop into my head. That it is definitely structurally similar to that, as it just, and it really works. It's the chemistry with your lead actors, Zosha and Aristotle, they're so good together. And it even, the dialogue is so quick. It almost reminded me of like one of those 30s zippy comedies where there are no pauses, right?
Yeah.
People are just talking, and it's off to the next thing. And I just also love the way that they take the ridiculousness of the world just as matter of fact. The fact that Max is like this, he builds robots and fights in robot fighting. It's like the robot UFC or MMA. Was that stop motion animation? How was that done?
It was, yeah, it was all stop motion. And so, I mean, basically there's almost no CG in the entire film, or no 3D animation. Almost everything was done 100% practically. And so me and Zach Stoltzfus, the DP of the film, we spent about 18 months, not every single day, but 2 or 3 days a week. We started in my living room building these miniatures and these models, kind of kit bashing them together, combining different model kits. And this was something that I had done previously on a couple shorts of mine, but it was really just kind of, part of it is because I love the way that 70s and 80s sci-fi looks. I love the original Star Wars films, that kind of like lived in universe, filled with greeble and detail, not really like the sleek science fiction aesthetic. But so I really love the way that looks. And then the other part of it was just like, realistically, we can't afford to hire CG artists, but we can kind of slap together and glue together some models. And if we don't try to compete with Marvel and DC, then maybe we can make something unique and different and interesting, and it's going to look handmade. It's going to look lo-fi, but it'll be on purpose and not, necessarily a compromise. So, we spent a long time kind of building out the backgrounds for the film. And then the first week we shot all on an LED stage, where we would put the pre-rendered backgrounds up on a video screen and then have the actors stand in front of it. And a lot of them were like animated 2D plates. And then we also used a little bit of Unreal Engine, where we had, one location, Max's home planet, is that is the only kind of CG location where it is,
I have to ask, if you don't mind me interrupting, did you shoot on the volume or like a low budget version of the volume that you created?
Yeah, it's basically a low budget version of the volume, but I mean, It was a real LED stage, but like I hope I'm not using the wrong terms here, but because I'm still relatively new to all this too, but it's like, from my understanding, like the volume is when the camera is hooked up to it, like a 3D tracker. And so we did one day where it was hooked up to that, and when you moved the camera, there was parallax, and we were using a Unreal Engine video game environment. The other 4 days that we shot on the LED stage, it was basically pre-rendered plates, the same way that like if two people are driving a car, the background behind them is moving, they're just playing a video clip behind them. But then the other 3 weeks that we shot, it was a combination of green screen, but then also rear screen projection. So it's the same thing as shooting on the LED stages, but just not a TV screen. And instead it was just, a projector putting that, and then we'd stand the actors in front of that.
We have a lot of questions here. Real quick, James Woolard, will there be a UK release, Michael?
I hope so. I mean, we're taking the movie to Berlin next week. And so it all depends if someone in the UK wants to buy it. But we played at BFI London, which was a really great experience. And I really hope it gets UK distribution. So I think it will be available somewhere in the UK eventually. The question is obviously when.
Yeah, I want to ask you this question because when we were at Oak Cliff, one of the discussions that you and other filmmakers had was the distribution. The distribution seemed to have been an obstacle, something to overcome for you and the other filmmakers. What was your distribution for Molli and Max ultimately like?
So we're in theaters starting today, and we have a limited theatrical release, which I'm, extremely grateful for, and was honestly not expecting, because I think if anyone is expecting to make a small, low budget independent film and end up in theaters, they're kind of crazy, based on kind of the way the landscape is right now. But so, we premiered at South by Southwest, and it was a really amazing reception. We got a lot of positive reviews out of it, but it was just a bleak year for films in general. Like nothing big was getting acquired. There was Fair Play at Sundance, but like other than huge name things, like a lot of the streamers have kind of stopped acquiring small titles. And so we went through the sales process. We showed it to a lot of people, and we actually had, 5 offers coming out of South by. A lot of them were very small, but we ended up partnering with a small indie distribution company called Level 33. And they've honestly been great. And like, they were the ones who were like, we want to do theatrical. And I was kind of like, yeah, right. Like, you're kind of just saying that, you're blowing smoke. And they've really, been great partners. They've been super transparent. They have like a Google Doc where we can keep track of everything that's going on, which from hearing other people talk about it is not always the case. And so we're in New York and LA starting today. We're also in 10 or 12 different cities around the country. The full list is at mollyandmax.com with a bunch of links to different tickets that you can buy at different places. And so we'll be in theaters until the 16th. The 15th at least. And, we'll maybe get extended, but again, you never know.
The chat is on fire. We've got over 500 people watching live. A lot of questions for you. So we'll try to get through as many as we can. We have another interview in 15 minutes. So we'll do as much as we can here. Super chat here from Sean Hu for 742 says, classic Doctor Who 63 to 89 did very well with low budget effects. It's nice to see that spirit is still going. And Christopher Moonlight Productions says, how do you think about sci-fi in a way that makes it relatable to today's worries and hopes?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think, like, to me, part of that was like updating a romantic comedy, which usually doesn't talk about the world. And I think science fiction is always about the relationship of an individual to society. And it's also about the relationship of like technology to society. And I think one of my favorite quotes about science fiction is from this guy, Frederick Pohl, Pohl. And he says that, like, I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but it's like, science fiction is not about predicting the flying car. It's about predicting the traffic jam afterwards. And I think part of kind of, the grand kind of philosophy of this film is essentially that no matter what day and age you are in, whether it's the past or the future, we're going to have some similar problems. And I think that's one of the things that I love about science fiction, is that you see your world in a slightly different time. So obviously everything is based in the future in this movie, but it's talking about very current day problems in the sense of, what it's like to live in 2023 when, living with social media as a big part of your life, living with an unstable political environment, living with a plague, and I've tried to, I hope it doesn't come off as too topical, but in my eyes, a lot of these things are very cyclical, in the sense that there's always going to be a politician who's trying to take advantage of normal people and kind of, fooling them. And then there's, there's from the Black Plague to the 1919 pandemic, like there's always going to kind of be these giant world disrupting events. And, I don't really want those to be the focus of anything. To me, these are kind of background elements. But I think when you're thinking about science fiction, you have to take into consideration what is the world outside of the characters, and how is the world a reflection of the characters, and what is that kind of relationship there for.
Yeah, it's so cleverly done, that game show, to become like president of the universe. It was just insane. And just the dialogue is so clever. I don't want to ruin any of it. Just the fact that it's so nonchalant, matter of fact, this crazy sci-fi universe. It just really enjoyable. The Nerd Far Away asks, "Hail, Mr. Litwak. Do you prefer filming on location or in studio? Advantages of each."
I will always pick studio over location. I mean, you can go to the bathroom, you have craft services right there, you have air conditioning. I mean, you can control the lighting. You're not fighting against the sunlight. I mean, I think that I will always choose a studio over real life location. And obviously, sometimes you need a real life location. It always depends on the script, and you need to do what's best for the script. But on a pure kind of comfort level, it's so much better to shoot on a studio.
Yeah. I'm looking up your website right now to share it with our audience. But everyone's asking how you can see it. It's in theaters, limited release, and then coming to VOD at some point.
Yeah, it'll be on video on demand March 22nd. We're also going to be doing a digital screening, I think, on March 9th. And that is with a company called Kino, Kino. And so that will be available to anybody who has internet access.
Here it is. It's playing in LA, New York, Atlanta, Austin, Charlotte, Chicago, Dallas, DC, Houston, Morro Bay, Nashville, Madison, Phoenix, Seattle. That's a decent theatrical release.
Yeah.
More than 10 cities.
Some good theaters in Orange County, so I may take my daughter to see it.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
Oh yeah, I there's just so much. Can you talk a little bit about you know what? We have so many questions. Okay. Let's see. JBGB says Gateway. Frederick Pohl is a legend. And then question here from Rumble 8Ls24 says, how did you come to cast Zosha Mamet? And is there any pressure knowing her father will likely see this film?
I actually don't know if her dad is going to watch the film. So,
oh no.
I mean, sometimes maybe he will, maybe he won't. I think she makes career choices for herself and doesn't really kind of take that into consideration. I think, I don't think he would maybe enjoy some of the political aspects of satire aspects of the film, but I'm sure he could still appreciate his daughter's wonderful performance in it. But so she, I'd been familiar with her work for many years because she was on Girls and she was on The Flight Attendant. And, she was my favorite part of both of those shows. I just think she's so funny. She's got a natural talent, a natural charisma. She also has comedic chops, even though she's not traditionally a comedian. But she's so just naturally funny. And so I had, she doesn't live in New York right now, but she had lived in New York for a long time, and I had lived in New York for a long time. And so my wife had worked with her husband briefly, but really we came to her through her agent and her manager, and we sent them the script. And, we had some loose mutual friends, but it really was that we sent it to her and she really liked it. And, there are certain actors who are interested in doing independent films. And she is just a true artist who wants to work on cool things. And she has no ego. She's really down to earth. She's really humble. Like, we were a 12-person crew. You have to have someone who's down for the adventure and understands kind of the hustle of making a low budget film. And she is just like the best team player you could ever ask for. And she was by far the most experienced person I'd ever worked with. And like, she could have gotten frustrated. She could have been impatient, and she really wasn't. She was just endlessly kind. She set the tone for everybody, like she had the most experience out of everybody on that set. And she really kind of like led by example and was so flexible. And yeah, I just cannot say enough nice things about her.
What about Aristotle? Was he on Saturday Night Live at the time when you cast him?
Yeah, so I found out about him also through our casting director, and she pointed me towards him, and I watched a bunch of his stand-up material because he had been working as a comedian for many years before he got cast on SNL, and then I watched a bunch of his SNL sketches. He had also had a sketch group called Goat Face that was on Comedy Central, and he is just this crazy like chameleon where he can do all of these insane impressions that are super specific, but he can also just like play grounded and normal. And he has this deep range. And with both of them, I wanted people that would kind of bring their unique personalities to the project and make it their own. And similarly too, Aristotle was also such an incredible team player, and was such a huge part of making the film. And they both have like amazing improv skills. And so I think so much of the chemistry was that they are just pros and know how to make each other feel comfortable. And then we would just drill things over and over again. We had 5 days of rehearsal, but they both just have great instincts.
Well, I mean, she is just, I cannot rave enough about her and the chemistry with Aristotle. And clearly, because at the end of the film, over credits, you've got a little bit of behind the scenes. You get to see, they seem like they were having a lot of fun, genuinely having a blast making this film. Another question here from Rudy for 5. Question for everyone. Do you think that the lack/failure of big budget movies, the flopbuster, which was the term that was coined by the trade publications last year, will mean we'll see more indie movies in theaters? Congrats, David. I look, this is why Film Threat exists, to tell you about these types of films. But yeah, what do you think, Michael?
I hope so. I mean, I think like Barbie and Oppenheimer are obviously huge movies. They aren't independent films, but I think, everybody kind of looks to what's the most successful and then they try to replicate that. And I think those are examples of 2 original films. Obviously, one's based off of IP and the other one's based off of a real life true story. But, I think there is kind of a superhero fatigue out there. I think people want something new. They want something different. And I mean, really what matters is people just look at the numbers. And so going out and seeing a small movie like this is really important, because if people look at it and say it was successful, then it helps get more of them get made. And so, and shows like this and publications like Film Threat like that, you need that for an indie ecosystem to be thriving.
Yeah. It's just, I think there's going to be an indie film revolution, because I'm sure that you made Molli and Max in the future for probably a very small percentage of Barbie and Oppenheimer. And I would also like to point out, Barbie and Oppenheimer, both of those movies made by filmmakers who started in indie film. Chris Nolan's first movie following was at the Slamdance Film Festival. His second film, Memento, was at Sundance. Greta Gerwig started as an actress. Mumblecore Queen, and brilliantly talented. So look at the top films are coming from indie film. And even Marvel back in the day used to hire and pluck indie filmmakers like James Gunn and say, hey, you could make a Marvel movie, go ahead. So what Marvel movie are you going to make, Michael?
I mean, it's one of those things, like, I would love to make a huge budget film. I have ambitions to do that, but I'm also not going to wait around for someone to call me. So I have, other projects that I'm working on, other things that I'm excited about. And if someone calls my phone, I'll definitely pick up and look into it. But, I love giant, big budget action, sci-fi and adventure films. So I would love to be doing that. But to me, it's more, my main priority is making things that I care about and doing it in a way that is creatively fulfilling and satisfying. So, you know, if I've learned anything from like 10 years of trying to get movies made, it's like sometimes things happen in ways that you don't expect, and you kind of have to kind of stay open to what life kind of puts in front of you, and go with the flow a little bit.
A question here. Apparently you've been knighted. Solomon Thornton says, Sir Michael, congratulations on the film. Any advice for beginning filmmakers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I kind of made over the last, you know, 10 years was like waiting for other people to try to kind of save me. And I think, you know, this is something Mark Duplass has talked about, and, you know, is one of the, you know, his viral quotes is like, the cavalry isn't coming. And I think a lot of people look at their shorts or even their first features as this like, oh, well, I just have to make something and get other people's attention, and then they'll come in and they'll save me and they'll do all the hard stuff. And it's a grind every time. Like Martin Scorsese still struggles to get movies made. Steven Spielberg has a number of projects that are in development, and it's like, it's always going to be really, really difficult. And I think the only thing you can do is just kind of put your head down, try to make movies that are possible within your means. And, you know, like you said, people like Christopher Nolan and Greta Gerwig, they started making $5,000 and $10,000 movies, and it's not glamorous. It's very difficult, but if it was easy, everybody would do it. So I think you got to really kind of figure out, and, you know, it took me a really long time to figure out, how do I do my version of a tiny, tiny movie? And you have to wear a lot of hats and learn how to do multiple things, because if you don't, you're letting your career kind of rest in other people's hands.
And a last question here. Suns and Shadows, who's a member, says, do you have any projects in the future? If so, anything you can tell us, or not yet?
Yeah, I have my next movie that's basically ready to go, and we're starting to send it out to financiers and production companies. And, you know, ideally we get a certain higher number and we can make it at a comfortable level. But if we don't get that number, then I'm ready to go and do it this way again, and make a small version of it. So it really, you know, part of it, honestly, people are looking at how well this does in theaters and how well it does on video on demand and how much press we get. And so spreading the word about this film will like actively help me get the next one made. So, you know, hopefully it'll happen, but to answer the question, it's a sci-fi Western heist film. So another kind of cross genre, but it's about a group of friends. And, you know, I think every movie's a love story, as James Cameron says. So this one is too, but in a very different way.
Well, it was also refreshing just to see a love story. I feel like Hollywood, for some strange reason, has been excising romance from films. It was the first thing I noticed when I saw The Force Awakens, the Star Wars sequel. I'm like, where is the romance? I mean,
yeah.
Star Wars, the first Star Wars began with the romance, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the Han Solo, Princess Leia storyline is like really the heart of those films, you know? I think it's, you know, it's a missed opportunity, and I can understand maybe some of the motivations behind it of wanting to not have that be the main focus, but I think there's always room for it, and it makes every movie better.
I agree. Well, you nailed it. The link to your website is going to be in the description of this video, so look for it. We'll add that, and we're going to put your interview, we're going to clip it and put it on our Film Threat Interviews channel. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Michael.
Awesome. Congratulations and good luck on your future projects. Make sure you don't forget us. Come talk to us.
Yeah. And go see Molli and Max in theaters.
Go see Molli and Max in theaters. Awesome. All right, Michael, have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Take care, guys.